They stood at the front door, suitcases in hand, trying the key over and over, until Mom finally asked, "Why isn't it working?" And I said, calm as ever, "Because I changed the lock and sold the house." "Hi, I'm Rachel. I spent years paying the bills while my sister chased hashtags and my parents turned a blind eye. Then they charged $100,000 to my credit card for her Gala and expected me to smile through it. But this time, I didn't just freeze the card. I froze the whole pattern. Want to know how I went from the invisible daughter to the one holding the deed and the final word? Before we dive into the story, if you're enjoying these meaningful stories, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on more. Now, let's start the story together. I was scraping out the last of the salad dressing into an old Tupperware when Mom, still flipping through her folded grocery list like it was a Sunday church bulletin, said, "We're out of oat milk again. Can you grab some on your way home from work?" She said it the way she always did, soft and casual, like it was a weather report, not a request. Not really. I didn't look up, just pressed the lid down and asked, "Is this for you or for Madison's tea cleanse?" There was a pause. Not long, but enough. "She needs something warm before bed," Mom replied. "She's under a lot of pressure with the Gala." The word hung in the air. Gala. I hadn't realized it had become official. Until that moment, I thought it was still a vague Pinterest board and a pile of vision boards taped to the fridge with my magnets. Mom slid the grocery list toward her purse. "She wants the event to feel fresh, seasonal," she added, like we were discussing a garden party, not something that would swallow half a credit limit. Madison breezed into the kitchen then, looking like a walking influencer campaign. She wore the parka I gave her for Christmas, the one she once called too safe. She gave Mom a kiss on the cheek and barely glanced my way. Her fingers were busy scrolling, liking, typing. She moved like the house belonged to her. Maybe it always had. "Hey, did you already get those candles?" she asked. "The ones that smell like eucalyptus and tension relief?" "No," I said, keeping my voice level. She nodded like I'd said yes, then opened the fridge. "Ugh, no oat milk?" Mom jumped in before I could say anything. "Rachel's picking it up after work." Madison smiled, "Thanks, sis," and walked back out like she hadn't just tossed her weight around the room. It wasn't new. Not the tone, not the assumption, not even the smile. But something about it sat differently that day. Like I'd finally heard the background music in a movie I'd been watching for years, loud, clear, and impossible to ignore. That night, after work, I sat on my bed with a paper container of stir-fry and opened my credit card app. Not out of paranoia, just routine. There it was, a charge labeled Venue Deposit, Mad Events, $14,000 pending. I didn't remember giving her my card, but that wasn't surprising. In our house, consent was always a soft yes, unless you said no loudly enough, and I rarely did. I placed the takeout container on the nightstand and stared at the number. $14,000 for a dream I wasn't even invited into. I didn't feel rage or panic or even disappointment. I just sat there, quietly awake in a way I hadn't been in years. Sometimes it's not the moment you lose something that changes you. It's when you realize how long it's been gone. And suddenly, I wasn't tired. I wasn't foggy. I was wide awake. The call came just before lunch, right as I was about to reheat leftovers in the break room microwave. A polite voice on the other end said, "Just confirming your floral order for the Madison Claire Gala. We've scheduled drop-off for Thursday morning." I paused. "I think you have the wrong number," I said. She repeated my name, my number, my email. I stood there, holding a cold container of pasta primavera and blinking at the blank gray wall. I hadn't given them my information, but someone had. At my desk, I clicked through my credit card app again. A florist, a catering deposit, custom-printed linens from a boutique out of state. The charges were stacked like bricks, some small, some staggering, but all under one name. Mine. When I called the card company, the woman on the line sounded gentle, practiced. She asked me to verify charges. 42,000 and some change had gone through in the last month. "Are you currently traveling?" she asked. "Or planning an event?" I swallowed. Apparently, I am. That night, I brought my work laptop home, not to finish blueprints, but to open up an Excel sheet. I cross-referenced every email confirmation I could find. Venue, flowers, catering, table settings, light rental, the custom LED arch Madison had posted a preview of on Instagram. I didn't remember saying yes to any of it, but the Bills didn't care. When I asked her about it, she was barefoot in the kitchen, balancing a smoothie in one hand and typing with the other. "Oh," she said, almost cheerfully, "I figured I'd pay you back once the brand picks up traction. You know, early investment. You used nearly $50,000 without asking." She sipped. "Rachel, you make a great salary, and it's not like I'm going on vacation. This is branding." Mom was at the table, folding cloth napkins. "You've always been the stable one," she said. "This is temporary. You'll bounce back." It wasn't the first time I'd heard that, but this time it felt like a verdict. The kitchen looked like a photo shoot gone wrong. Boxes of votives, sample menus, half-unpacked banners that read things like, "Live well, wear brighter." My own handwriting was nowhere to be found. I printed out the charges, line by line, highlighted in yellow. At the top of the folder, I wrote, "Statement, Personal Use Review." It felt too formal, but I didn't have a better word for it. Theft felt like a word for strangers, not for sisters. By the time I added everything up, the total read 97,000, give or take a few cents. No one had asked, no one had explained, no one even said thank you. I placed the folder on the dining table that evening, right next to Mom's grateful heart mug and the sugar-free cookies she kept pretending were homemade. The folder sat there through dinner. No one touched it. Later that night, as I rinsed my plate, I saw someone had added a sticky note to the front. Gala week. Final draft due. The handwriting wasn't mine. I didn't ask who wrote it. I didn't need to. The folder stayed right there, sealed, unopened. And that told me more than any apology ever could. They thought I was sulking, that I was pouting about budgets and receipts and all the usual Rachel things I was supposed to eventually get over. But I wasn't sulking. I was staging. By the time July settled into its thickest heat, I had already called the card company. A brief, polite conversation. I told them I suspected unauthorized use. They asked if I wanted to freeze the card. I said yes. I didn't offer a reason beyond that. There was no fight, no yelling, just a quiet end. At night, the house buzzed with the hum of overworked air conditioning, the sharp clink of ice cubes in Madison's protein shakes, the occasional thud of delivery boxes on the front porch. During the day, I kept working. I kept smiling. But I had started moving differently. One afternoon during lunch, I sat across from Nina Carter in a cafe downtown. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not since a networking event where we bonded over slow closings and broken plumbing. I handed her a folder and a flash drive. "The house is in my name," I said. "It's time." She didn't ask for details, just nodded, looked through the documents, and said, "You'll need to fix the garden gate before the showing." Back at the house, I started packing one box at a time. Books, important documents. A few things from the kitchen I actually bought. I didn't touch the rest. Most of it wasn't mine, just things I paid for. That same week, I called Grandma Dolores. I hadn't spoken to her properly in a while, not since the holidays when I drove across town to drop off sweet bread and stayed for barely 10 minutes. "You still have that guest room?" I asked. "One," she replied, "and 0 patience for freeloaders." I smiled. Fair enough. I told her I'd only need it for a while, just until I figured things out. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Sheets are clean. Don't track in dust." It felt good. That kind of plain honesty, no decoration. Dolores never said, "You're welcome," in a sugary voice. But she showed up when it counted, and that meant more. At home, no one noticed the boxes. They thought I was reorganizing. Mom was busy fussing over Gala RSVPs. Madison was complaining that the caterer changed their hummus supplier. Dad was silent, mostly watching reruns of baseball games on mute. I passed him one evening and slipped a manila envelope into the drawer beneath his remote. Inside was a copy of the 2018 deed, the one he signed over when the taxes piled up and I bailed us out. He had called it a temporary fix. I called it ownership. Later that week, while I was folding clothes into a laundry basket, Mom poked her head into my room. "Your credit card isn't working," she said. I didn't look up. "Must be expired." She lingered for a beat, then walked away. No one asked any more questions, which honestly was all the answer I needed. By the time they lit the candle walls at the venue, the house was already under contract. I stood near the back of the ballroom, half shadowed behind a cluster of potted palms. The place was decked out in blush and gold, Madison's signature palette. Soft uplighting pulsed gently to the rhythm of an instrumental remix, and servers in all black moved like dancers across polished floors. I recognized the branding. It was plastered across the menus and mirrored welcome boards. Madison Claire, redefining radiance. No one noticed me, not even Mom, who passed by twice, wineglass in hand, bragging to someone in a sequined dress about how proud we all are. I didn't mind. I wasn't there to be seen. I was there to witness. From where I stood, I could see Madison moving from group to group, glowing under the soft lights. Her smile was wide, practiced, polished. She wore white, of course, and held a flute of champagne like it had been scripted into her hand. She looked like a star. She always had that gift, making chaos look curated. Halfway through the evening, a tech assistant signaled her. She stepped up to the mic, let the applause settle, and launched into a speech. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This dream was once just a doodle on a napkin during a sleepless night." She laughed lightly. "And now here we are." The room echoed with polite chuckles. I want to thank my team, my friends, and of course, my family, especially my sister, Rachel, our silent investor. She looked straight past me as she said it. The crowd clapped, some turned to look for me, but I didn't raise my hand or smile. I just stood still, a silent fixture in the background, like always. They didn't know I wasn't silent anymore. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Nina. "Wire cleared. Docs finalized. They take possession next Friday. Congrats." I slipped the phone into my clutch and exhaled through my nose, quiet and certain. I didn't stay for dessert. I never liked fondant anyway. Outside, the southern night hugged my skin with thick humidity. Streetlights shimmered off puddles left behind by a summer sprinkle. I walked 3 blocks to my car, heels clicking against the sidewalk. When I reached it, I took a moment, just standing there with my hand on the door. Then I pulled out my phone and called Grandma Dolores. "I'll be by before 10 tomorrow," I said. "I've got boxes." She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Use the side door. I don't want you tracking in dirt." I smiled, standing under the yellow wash of the street lamp. Back inside that ballroom, they were toasting a vision, a brand, a curated, candle-lit future that I had funded without consent. They were taking selfies and tagging sponsors, and I had already walked out of the frame. The truth was, I never needed to be center stage. I just needed to step off theirs. Mom tried the front door 3 times before she realized the lock had been changed. From across the street, I watched her jiggle the handle, pause, try again, then glance at Madison, who was standing behind her with a wheeled suitcase and an air of irritated disbelief. Dad stood a few feet back, holding a duffel bag like he wasn't quite sure why he'd packed it. The sun was sharp overhead, early September, but the heat hadn't let go. The lawn looked trimmed, fresh mulch around the flower beds, Nina's idea to prep the house for its new owners. Across the street, a moving truck backed into the driveway of what used to be mine. They hadn't noticed me yet. I was sitting on the porch swing of the neighbor's house. Mrs. Lynn had offered it while she helped the new family unload. I sipped lemonade from a plastic cup and waited. Mom tried the door once more, then turned around, her mouth already forming a question. I stood and walked across the street, an envelope in hand. "What's going on?" she asked, blinking like the sun was in her eyes, though she wasn't facing it. I handed her the envelope. "Everything you need is in there." She looked down, opened it slowly. Inside were the deed transfer, the sale confirmation, a checklist for the new owners. Her fingers trembled slightly. Madison stepped forward. "You can't do this," she snapped. "I already did," I said, her face twisted. "This is Dad's house." Dad opened the folder, flipping to the second page. His mouth moved, but no words came out. I let the silence speak for itself. "Remember that IRS notice in 2018? I asked, my voice even. "The one with the red stamp?" He nodded faintly. "You signed it over to me then. I paid the back taxes. I've paid the mortgage ever since." Madison stepped between us. "Still, you didn't say anything. That's manipulative." I held her gaze. "You left the key to your black card in my drawer 2 years ago. I didn't use it until you did." Her mouth opened, then closed again. That card had her name on it. I had just frozen mine. "I didn't know," she said, softer now. "I didn't mean—" I handed her a second envelope. Inside, a set of keys, an address, and a small yellow note with Grandma Dolores's handwriting. "Room upstairs. Work starts at 6. Apron on by 5:45. Mom stared at it like it was written in a foreign language. "You sent our things to Dolores?" "No," I said. "I sent them to your mother. She agreed to take you in, as long as you pull your weight." Madison scoffed. "She can't tell me what to do." "She's been telling people what to do since before either of us could spell our names." Dad looked at the paper, then at me. His voice was rough. "What about the card?" "Which one?" "The black one," he said. "The one we used for the gala." "That wasn't mine." Madison blinked. "What?" "You opened it during your short-lived copywriting job, left it behind. You thought it was mine. It wasn't." She looked down at the key in her hand, suddenly quiet. Across the street, the new owners waved. A baby's giggle floated through the air, and the golden retriever barked twice, tail wagging. I took a breath. "You've got 3 guest rooms," I said, "and 6 days to figure out what work feels like." I didn't wait for a reply. As I turned to walk away, I caught a glimpse of a small plastic tricycle on the edge of the lawn. Red frame, white wheels, a bell that gleamed in the sun. A new family was moving in, and for the first time in years, I was moving out for good. Grandma says some things can't be taught, only learned through sweat. I didn't go inside the cafe that morning. I just walked past, slow enough to see through the kitchen window. The air outside was crisp. October had finally pushed summer out of Charlotte, leaving golden leaves in its wake. The sky was cloudless, and the smell drifting from the back alley was something warm: yeast, basil, maybe onions. Inside, Madison was wiping down the counter. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun, sleeves rolled. She wasn't talking. She wasn't smiling either, but she looked present. Dad sat near the back, folding takeout menus into neat little piles. His motions were slow, but he didn't stop. Mom was at the sink, washing a full tray of baking sheets. She moved deliberately, almost like she was being watched, but I knew Dolores wasn't hovering. She didn't need to. Her presence had always been the kind that didn't raise its voice. I kept walking. My new apartment was just a few blocks away. Nothing fancy. 2 rooms, soft light in the mornings, no shared walls. I had a small plant by the window and a cabinet full of mismatched mugs. At night, I could hear the soft creak of the floorboards instead of someone else's voice asking what I'd picked up for dinner. That evening, as I unlocked my door, I found a letter tucked between the screen and the knob. No return address, just my name, written in cursive I hadn't seen since childhood. I made tea before opening it. The note was short, 1 sentence, careful handwriting. "You were right. I just didn't want you to be. Mom." No apology, no excuses. But it was something. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into a shoebox in my closet. Inside were a few other things I hadn't thrown away yet. An old photo of us at a beach in Myrtle, sun-faded and torn at the corner. The receipt for the back taxes I paid in 2018, my signed lease agreement for this apartment. I labeled the box Keep. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just made tea and bought myself a bunch of orange marigolds from the little cart outside the pharmacy. Not because it was a holiday, not for anyone else's centerpiece, just because I liked the color. A few days later, I walked by the old house again. The new family had settled in. Halloween pumpkins lined the steps. A skeleton decoration swung slightly in the breeze. Somewhere behind the hedge, I heard a child's laugh. It echoed faintly, like a story continuing without me. I didn't stop, because this wasn't a story about getting back what I'd lost. It was about leaving before I lost myself, and making sure no one ever mistook my silence for permission again. Sometimes, healing doesn't come with applause or closure. It just shows up quietly, like steam rising from a cup of tea or a letter left without a return address. Watching my family work under Grandma's roof, not asking, not expecting, just doing, it said more than any apology ever could. Maybe love isn't always loud. Maybe it lives in the quiet choice to step away, to stop enabling what hurts, and to believe that everyone, even family, can grow when they're finally asked to stand on their own. If this story has reminded you of your own journey, whether you're the one holding everything together or the one learning to carry your share, I hope you know it's never too late to shift. Feel free to share your thoughts or just sit with them. Sometimes that's more than enough.